Thanks for joining us tonight on another episode of The Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters, and I am your host for another fabulous little half hour where we are going to talk all things motorsports. Because let me tell you something, this past weekend, there was a lot of great racing going on. We had Formula One in action, Supercars in action, IndyCar in action, NASCAR in action, and actually all four of those races were double headers. So Formula One was with Supercars, NASCAR was with IndyCar. Lots of cool things going on there. Lots of great racing, lots of storylines to discuss. And we're going to talk about all of that in addition to the latest news and notes from each respective motorsport out there. So without further ado, remember, if you like the show, feel free to give me a follow on social media. That's rpeeters33, RPEETERS33. And then as always, make sure you've got WTHR Plus app installed on your smart TV, because you won't want to miss a single episode of the Racing Report each and every week. So let's go ahead right now and jump right on into Formula One news, because this is something we talked a little bit about last week, but obviously with the ongoing war in Iran, conflict in the Middle East, everything going on there. Obviously, we know that the World Endurance Championship did postpone their Qatar Grand Prix, which was set for later this month. They postponed that to an unknown date at this current time. But Formula One is still watching the situation very closely, and again, we don't have specific updates on exactly what's going to happen with Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, but we do know, this is according to Racer, that in the event that both those events are canceled, they will not be made up. It will just be a cancellation, and we'll go from having 24 F1 races down to 22, and it will just pretend that they didn't exist. But again, an announcement regarding that is seemingly imminent, but again, we don't have that. We don't know when it's coming, but again, the FIA is continuing to monitor it. Something else going on, this was very interesting. We've talked about this in the past many times in past Racing Report episodes, but the Felipe Massa lawsuit, where he's alleging that because the FOM knew about the Crashgate scandal and did not act soon enough, that he technically would have won the 2008 World Drivers' title had Renault been properly penalized. So the update to this is that the court has ruled that Formula One Management, FOM, and Bernie Ecclestone must pay £250,000 worth of legal fees to Felipe Massa. But again, this lawsuit is ongoing, and this is the only update we know about that now. They're basically saying, hey, you have to pay his legal fees. But again, it's not this whole lawsuit thing. It's not going to overturn it. It's not going to take a championship away from Lewis Hamilton. It's really more closure for Felipe Massa for saying, I would have won this championship had things been done properly. And at this point, he's really just looking for damages, which, hey, you make your decision on that. It's not for me to tell you. But speaking of Lewis Hamilton, and this is the final piece of Formula One news that we're going to talk about this week, is this was very interesting. Lewis Hamilton said in an interview, specifically on motorsport.com, that he is not going to retire from Formula One until the series returns to Africa, which again has not happened since the early 90s at the Kyalami circuit. And so Lewis Hamilton has now come out and said, hey, I don't plan to say goodbye to this sport until we are back in Africa. And that's a big deal for him, given the fact that he is of African descent, coming from Africa, though he was born and raised in Great Britain. But Lewis Hamilton putting his foot down, saying, I won't quit until we're back in Africa in some way, shape, or form. Now, obviously, F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali, we talked about this the last couple of weeks, is that any potential new race to the Formula One calendar wouldn't likely come around until 2029, which essentially means we've still got another few years with Hamilton on the grid if what he says here if he sticks to what he says here. So if he sticks to that and says, nope, I am not retiring until we're back in Africa, then yeah, he's going to stick around for at least the next 3 years. So definitely some big news there for Lewis Hamilton fans. But with that being said, let's go ahead now and transition into the world of IndyCar, because we did have an IndyCar race this past weekend, and we do have another IndyCar race this weekend as well that we need to talk about. And so with all that being said, first and foremost, we're going to a new street race this weekend in the Texas GP, the Arlington Grand Prix. But we also finally have a look at what the Freedom 250 Grand Prix is going to look like. Now, this is going to be a 7-turn, 1.66 mile long street circuit that will be racing around the National Mall in Washington, D.C., I believe just west of the U.S. Capitol building. And the longest straight will run along Pennsylvania Avenue, and that's going to be about just under half a mile, so about 0.4 of a mile. But definitely, that's the look that we got. Not necessarily the most intriguing or inspiring street race. Kind of gives me kind of San Jose vibes, but again, given the parameters of where they had designed the track, it's not like they were going to put it in a parking lot. It was going to be on the streets of Washington, D.C., and this is what we got. So I think it'll be interesting. It's going to be a very quick and short looking kind of street race, which could be good, could be bad. Looks like there could be some decent passing zones in there, especially into turn 1. But again, who knows? And who really knows how this is all going to look? It looks like, though, this seems more down the road than previous IndyCar street races have been, especially ones announced at the last minute. So it looks like the likelihood that this happens is a lot more possible than I might have originally thought, and maybe a bunch of other pundits like myself would have originally thought. But again, that's where IndyCar is going coming up here later on in August. Now let's turn our attention, though, to the Indianapolis 500, which is coming up in May. So we are about just a couple of months out from the Indy 500, if you can believe it. And we now have learned that Connor Daly is going to be back in the race. Again, he's not been full-time in IndyCar. He lost his gig with Juncos Hollinger at the end of last year. He's been kind of on the outside looking in. But now he has announced that he's going to go team up with Ryan Reinbold Racing again, which is the same team that he raced for in 2024, where he finished 10th, actually. And he's going to race for them again. He's going to, instead of being behind the number 24 machine, he's going to be in the 23 machine this year. And he'll have sponsorship from Kingspan. So that's Connor Daly. Good big news for Connor Daly fans today, knowing that he'll be back again at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in the month of May. Now let's talk about something big here, specifically talking about Doug Boles. A couple of things that Doug Boles has said over the past couple of days. Now, first and foremost, this is the most interesting thing, I think, to me, is that Doug Boles has said that IndyCar is now, quote-unquote, open to the idea of extending the season and ending it a little bit later in the fall. Now, here's why he said that. This is very interesting because, as we've known, the Boston Consulting Group told Mark Miles back in about 2014 that the best case scenario for them would be to not race during the NFL season. End the season before Labor Day so that you're not competing with the NFL, you're not competing with NASCAR, you're not competing with Formula One. And I've always had a very strong opinion about that idea. But it's also important to note that now Doug Boles, he is the president of IndyCar. He is making a lot more of these decisions, and one of these decisions that is coming with Fox, which is also now a stakeholder in the series, they're saying, hey, we could actually run the season a little bit later if we wanted. And Doug Boles is pointing to the fact that the U.S. Nationals for the NHRA last year actually got a significant ratings boost by serving as the program following an NFL football game. So Doug Boles is saying, essentially, hey, if we could have an NFL game at 1 o'clock precede us, and then we go on the air around like 4:30, we could get a sizable ratings increase that would justify us running that deep into the season. Making it even better would be, say, if there's a championship on the line. So this is a very interesting news article from the Sports Business Journal where this is what Doug Boles is saying, and it's a lot in part with them working with Fox a lot more to maybe get that kind of TV window where a potential race in mid to late September, maybe early October, would actually follow an NFL game, which would again give them a huge ratings boost with the with the NFL as a lead-in. So that's interesting to me, and I'm going to be continuing to watch it because I think that's great. That's something that I personally believe the series should have been doing, should have done a lot sooner, but obviously was not possible with NBC, because the thing about with NBC is it's different when football is leading you in than when it's leading you out. So if NBC is going to be, if NBC has Sunday Night Football, an IndyCar race leading into Sunday Night Football isn't going to help so much as if an NFL game precedes an IndyCar race. So, interesting news there. Also, something Doug Bowles talked about was the potential about future doubleheaders or continuing this Phoenix doubleheader. He says he's going to talk with Ben Kennedy and Steve O'Donnell about future possibilities, whether or not they continue doing Phoenix partnership or whether or not they move on to other potential doubleheader sites. So a couple of things that we'll be watching here. That's just from Doug Bowles, now president of IndyCar, talking about that. So with that being said, let's go ahead now and move on and take our first break of the show. But don't go anywhere just yet, because when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the news out of the world of supercars, and we're going to talk about the news and notes from NASCAR, because we do have a lawsuit update. Yes, the Chris Gabehart versus Joe Gibbs Racing, or Joe Gibbs Racing versus Chris Gabehart lawsuit. We do have an update for that, so you won't want to miss that. That's coming up after these messages right here on the Racing Report. And welcome back to the Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters. Thanks so much for sticking with us through that break. Let's go ahead now and move on into the world of supercars, because this is very great news. Well, not great, but interesting to say the least. The Newcastle government has discussed a motion regarding supercars' potential return to New South Wales and to that region. However, the motion for a supercars return appeared popular. The government is now ultimately deciding that they don't want any future race to be held on city streets. So that kind of throws some things into an issue, because it's not like they have a permanent racetrack in New South Wales and Sydney and Newcastle and these places. So it would have to be something like a street race, but the city government is basically like, you know what, we want this back, but not necessarily at the expense of shutting down local city streets. So that's something to keep in mind and keep an eye on as we go forth, and maybe we'll see supercars return to Sydney, New South Wales, or potentially Newcastle, or maybe other areas in the New South Wales province. Meanwhile, Supercars says it is taking a quote-unquote NASCAR-style approach to the upcoming Bend 500 at the Bend Motorsports Park. Now, the September 11th through 13th Enduro event is being billed now as the, quote, ultimate camping weekend, after moving the race from the shorter to the shorter West Circuit that will allow for fans to watch the race from their camping spots. So if you are a fan in Australia and you want to go and check out a race at the Bend, I guess they're giving you more incentives to do so, especially if you are willing to camp there. Now, second to last piece of Supercars news. Former Supercars champion and former commentator Mark Skaife says that the decision to remove him and Neil Crompton from the broadcast booth at the beginning of this year came from the top down. The head of Supercars, the CEO, James Warburton, reportedly made that call, and that's what Mark Skaife is telling Speed Cafe. So it looks like that was a decision made from the top and not necessarily by various other people in the series, not by Fox Sports, which broadcasts Supercars in Australia. So that's kind of interesting. Did seem a bit shocking. Skaife did seem to say that it was not handled well, but at least now we know who made that decision. Still kind of unsure why, but we know who made that decision. Now, finally, in the world of supercars, during the Melbourne Grand Prix weekend, Max Verstappen reportedly said that he loves supercars and he would like to race at Bathurst sometime in either a GT3 car or a supercars machine. So that's kind of cool. You got Max Verstappen looking at supercars, thinking it's one of the best series, which, objectively speaking, it is, at least in my opinion, and that of Max Verstappen as well. So some big news there. Maybe we'll see Max Verstappen compete at Bathurst here in the near future. But with all that being said, let's talk now about NASCAR news, because I did tease before we took a break about the Joe Gibbs Racing versus Chris Gabehart lawsuit. We do have an update on that. In a recent court filing, Joe Gibbs Racing has revealed that it hired a private investigator to follow Chris Gabehart following the conclusion of the 2025 NASCAR season. And in fact, photos of the PI following Gabehart and Spire Motorsports executives and people within Spire Motorsports are posted in those court documents, which was posted as well on motorsport.com, which is very interesting. Matt Weaver did a great job digging into some of those court documents. And additionally, Joe Gibbs Racing has also filed exhibits in the form of declarations from team competition director Wally Brown, driver Denny Hamlin, former one of Gabehart's former drivers that he used to crew chief. Meanwhile, Toyota's Andy Graves and rival team owner Bob Jenkins of Front Row Motorsports. Now, they all were asked to write these declarations to show the court why the alleged theft of such proprietary information is important. And I won't go into details exactly of what each person wrote, but I do highly recommend to read Matt Weaver's article on motorsport.com if you want to get more, because this was very interesting to kind of read some of the things that they were saying, not necessarily in bad faith towards Gabehart, but more so just saying why this alleged theft is as big of a deal as it is. Probably the other biggest piece of news in NASCAR is that Alex Bowman was sidelined and has been sidelined from his driving duties of the number 48 Chevrolet because of vertigo. He's been diagnosed with vertigo. And as a result of that, Anthony Alfredo replaced him in the car this past weekend at Phoenix. And now this weekend at Las Vegas, Justin Allgaier is set to replace him as well. No real timetable for when Alex Bowman could get back in a car. Of course, vertigo symptoms, they could last for a little bit or they could last for a long while. So this might be something that we just have to watch on a week-to-week basis. Meanwhile, Timmy Hill is going to return to the Cup Series later this month in Darlington. He's going to be driving for Garage 66. So Timmy Hill fans, get ready. He's going to be back in the Cup Series. And speaking of the Cup Series, for FS1 saw 2.841 million viewers for the Cup race at Phoenix this past Sunday, which is essentially flat compared to last year's ratings. But hey, I would take flat ratings over declining ratings any day, especially given the fact that it went on to cable. So that is it for this section of news. That is it for the enclosed wheeled cars, I guess, Supercars, NASCARs. But we're going to take our second break of the show, and when we come back, we're going to recap all of the races from this past weekend, because, boy, there's a lot to get to, and we're going to get you ready for the races that are this weekend, because, again, we've got NASCAR, we've got IndyCar coming back, and we've got Formula One as well. So, lots to look forward to this weekend, and all that's coming up right here after these messages on the Racing Report. Welcome back to the Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters. Thanks so much for sticking with us through that break. You know, we had an incredible weekend of racing, and of course, it happened all over the place. We had Supercars and Formula One in Melbourne for the Australian Grand Prix weekend. Then we had a NASCAR and IndyCar doubleheader that was in Phoenix. And let me tell you something, lots to unpack from that. So let's go ahead and start in Melbourne, down under, with the Australian Grand Prix. George Russell won the first race of the F1 season, followed by Kimi Antonelli and then Charles Leclerc rounding out the podium. Now, these new F1 regs are gonna take some getting used to. Definitely, it's going to take a lot of getting used to hearing those cars kind of back off at the end of the straights and hearing them kind of peak and have to save energy. This 50-50 power unit, half being internal combustion, the other half being electric, is definitely interesting. It's taking the drivers a lot of work to kind of adapt, and it's taking, I think, fans a lot of work to adapt as well. Obviously, the start was insane. Franco Colapinto almost hit Liam Lawson there, and then later in the race, Ferrari does Ferrari things. I think Ferrari might have one of the better cars on the grid this year, but of course they kind of shot themselves in the foot by not pitting under a virtual safety car that happened within the first 15 laps of the race. And ultimately, when you look at how far back Charles Leclerc finished compared to Kimi Antonelli, I think that kind of speaks for itself. They definitely could have been a lot closer had maybe they pitted. But either way, it was a thrilling battle there between George Russell and between Charles Leclerc to start the race. It was a lot of fun to watch. So just a general mixed bag. There's some good things to take away from these new F1 regs, and there's some bad things to take away. And I think I'll be very curious to see what China looks like and how things progress as we get further and further into the season. Obviously, we've got 3 back-to-back races starting off with Australia, then we go to China, and then we're going to go to Japan. And I'm curious to see what it's going to look like in China, having that long straight on the front, and then also kind of a long straight on the back there as well. But then Suzuka getting into the kind of more flowing corners and maybe less passing zones. What's that's going to be like? I'm just curious. I'm very curious to see what these new regs are going to have in store when it comes to the racing quality and when it comes to just how these drivers are able to maneuver around these cars. But outside of that, we also had Formula 2 and Formula 3 in action in Australia. And I know we don't usually talk about these, but I feel like it's important to mention them because in Formula 2, we had Colton Herta making his debut in that series. Now, it didn't go super well. He crashed in practice, had a poor qualifying attempt, and then really didn't do much in the sprint race. Actually had some contact in the sprint race, but in the feature race, he came around and took advantage of a lot of attrition and took advantage of some penalties of drivers ahead of him and ended up getting 7th out of it. So Colton Herta scores points in his first ever Formula 2 weekend, maybe not in the sprint race, but does so in the feature race. But in those sprint races in the feature race, Joshua Dirksen won the sprint and Nikola Solov won the feature. In Formula 3, the sprint race was won by Bruno Delpino, and the feature race was won by former Macau Grand Prix winner, American driver Ugo Ugochukwu, taking his first Formula 3 victory in Australia. That was a big deal for him. That was really cool to see an American. I think everybody had their eyes on Colton Herta if they were looking to watch an American. But here comes Ugo Ugochukwu with a victory. So congratulations to him. Hopefully it pays off for him. Always love to see a successful American driver doing well down in the world of open-wheeled racing in Europe, or in this case, Australia. But hey, Supercars was also with Formula 1 this week in Melbourne. They had 4 races as part of the Melbourne Super Sprint. Brody Kostecki won 3 of them. Brody Kostecki was on a tear this weekend, and I think he could have swept the whole thing. He could have won 4, but Brock Feeney got in there and won the 3rd race ahead of Brody Kostecki. But in general, just a thrilling race. And of course, Brock Feeney having a terrifying accident at the start of the 4th race, kind of spinning around and getting clobbered there. Serious damage to his number 88 Ford Mustang, but definitely got out of the car and he's okay. But man, was that an exciting weekend of racing down there in the Supercars. Of course, the races were short, but they were, as always, very fun. That was not meant to happen. Let's talk about IndyCar now, as I apologize for that. But in IndyCar, Joseph Newgarden came on strong. He went all last year without winning a race until the very last race of the season in Nashville. And now he doesn't have to wait that long because he immediately wins at Phoenix, which means Joseph Newgarden has now won the most recent 2 oval races as we go in and look ahead to the Indianapolis 500, which is our next oval race. So that could be something to watch as the month of May gets closer. But obviously, there was some controversy there. Alex Palou crashed with DNF, did not finish in his 100th start after contact with Rinus VeeKay. And then the same kind of contact happened while battling for the lead between Christian Rasmussen and Will Power. Now, there's a lot of controversy among who was at fault. I think it's a racing deal, but other people don't. If you want to hear my real thoughts on that, feel free to listen to my podcast, Racing with Rob and Roller podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. In NASCAR, though, NASCAR was also in Phoenix. Ryan Blaney completed the Penske sweep, winning the Cup race. So not only did Penske get the pole in the IndyCar race with David Malukas, then Joseph Newgarden won the race, Joey Logano got the pole in the Cup race, and then Ryan Blaney won the race. So literally could not have been a more perfect weekend for Team Penske. But in the O'Reilly Series, Justin Allgaier got his win, another well-executed Phoenix win for Justin Allgaier at probably one of his best tracks. But now, as we look at that was all those races from this past weekend. Now let's talk about the races that are coming up this weekend. We've got Formula One, as I said, in China at the Shanghai International Circuit, and then we've got NASCAR Cup Series and the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series are in Las Vegas. The Truck Series is again off until Darlington next week. And then we've got IndyCar going for the first time around the streets of Arlington, around the Jerry World, and wherever the Rangers play. I'm not really a Texas Rangers fan. You know what? Look, I'm a Mariners fan, so if they're in the AL West, I probably don't like them. Sorry. But, hey, IndyCar is coming out there for that, so that'll be a big deal. And then coming up next week, again, as I said, IMSA has got the 12 hours of Sebring, while Formula E will have the Madrid E-Prix. Meanwhile, the next Supercars race isn't for another month when they're in Taupo for their New Zealand round. They've got 2 New Zealand rounds, by the way. This will be the first one in Taupo. So that is it for this week's episode of the Racing Report. Thank you again so much for tuning in and watching. We really appreciate it. Again, be sure if you like the show, give me a follow on social media at rpeters33. And as always, have that handy-dandy little WTHR Plus app installed on your smart TV. So for WTHR Plus, my name is Rob Peeters, and this has been another episode of The Racing Report. We hope you have a great weekend and enjoy every single lap that's turned.